Musical minimalism. This is one of the two isms that I promised you we would encounter in the last 2 units of this course. Minimalism originated in the plastic arts, particularly in painting, and it came into existence just after the middle of the 20th century. It is characterized by simplicity and repetition above all things. And during the 1960s, a number of notable musicians, including Steve Reich, John Adams, and Philip Glass, began to cultivate the musical counterpart of this style. And as I may already have told you, it is a style that has found great favor with concert and operatic audiences of our time, but it is one that critics generally hate. And it's also a style to which many composers object, largely because they resent the popularity of this style with audiences. And as we are soon going to see, this music is very simple and very classical. Let's begin by considering the various opinions that exist on minimalism. It's one of those things that people seem either to like or to hate. And in doing so, you can prepare yourself to understand the principles of this musical style. Now, the slogan of the minimalist is "less is more." And this is true with minimalists in the plastic arts and those in music. Surely you have heard this saying before. And I hope you realize that this is a non sequitur. That is, less is not really more, is it? Think about it. If you were doing a job and you were paid only half the amount that you expected and you were told less is more, would you believe it? I don't think so. But practitioners of minimalism believe that a smaller group of ideas is better than a larger group of ideas. And this notion seems to hearken back to the classical idea of restraint. And in minimalist compositions, the number of different musical ideas is relatively small. Opponents of minimalism, however, see this restraint of ideas not as a virtue, but rather as an indication of a lack of imagination. They say a little goes a long way because the same idea used over and over again could be construed to indicate that the artist, the musician, whatever, does not have enough imagination or enough artistic facility to manage a larger group of ideas. Whatever opinions there are on musical minimalism, and I certainly won't hold you responsible for knowing them, having reviewed them, you are now prepared to examine a style of musical composition that uses a rather small array of ideas and that presents these ideas again and again. In fact, musical minimalism is very easy to understand because it uses 2 principles, and you can observe these principles in every minimalist composition you will ever encounter. The primary principle of presentation in minimalism is one that I've already stated to you. That is repetition. If you hear a musical idea, you can be absolutely certain that you are going to hear it again and again and again. And there's nothing new about this at all. You are well aware that the primary principle of presentation in classical music is also repetition. Remember those compositions by Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven, where you heard a rhythmic motive stated again and again, a motive multiplied to create a phrase multiplied to create a melody, and so on. Repetition is one of the hallmarks of the classical musical style, and is also the hallmark of musical minimalism. So musical minimalism has a hint of the neoclassical about it. Now, the repetition of an idea is very easily tolerated in the plastic arts. If you get tired of looking at a painting, all you have to do is to turn away from it. So the artist is not normally obligated to do anything to relieve the possible monotony of repetition. But this simply would not do with music. If you are trapped in a seat in a concert hall, an unrelieved repetition of a musical idea could become both tedious and eventually maddening. So there is a second and very necessary principle of musical minimalism, and that is variation. Yes, musical ideas are presented again and again, sometimes dozens of times or more, but as they are repeated, they are varied ever so slightly. And so what you have is a presentation of the familiar, and you have a sense that what is being presented to you is undergoing a very slow transformation. And I suppose that's one of the appeals of this musical style: identity and variation. So when you think of musical minimalism, think of its two primary principles: repetition and variation. Now, minimalism is one of those musical styles that has or that invokes certain associations. Not only can you expect to find minimalism in certain musical or cultural context in the musical world, but it has a certain image or association that seems to be universally recognized. Let's examine these things. First, musical minimalism is a style that is associated with contemporary opera. Indeed, most of the most successful operas of the last 2 or 2.5 decades have been written by minimalist composers. The minimalist trinity, Reich, Glass, and Adams, have all composed spectacularly successful essays in this genre. In fact, when people think of contemporary opera, their mind goes almost immediately to the achievements of the minimalist composers of our time. And you should have this same association as well. You probably have noticed that I have mentioned only American composers in connection with musical minimalism. And there's a very good reason for this. This style was originated by American composers in the United States of America. Everyone in the world of art music knows this fact as well, and so this style is internationally associated with the United States of America. Basically, minimalism is American music. In fact, it's real American music. It's a style that was invented here, a style that was invented by our own native-born composers. It's a style internationally recognized as being American. So think about it, people. We've come a long way from the 19th century, when America was a musical backwater. Yes, we produced some good performers during that time, but our composers could not compare with those of Europe. During the 20th century, we acquired a wonderful array of internationally famous composers through immigration. People like Stravinsky, Schoenberg, and Varese. All of them giants in the field, moved to the United States and became part of our musical cultural tradition. And toward the end of the 20th century and continuing into our own time, our own native-born American composers have developed a musical style that is internationally associated with the United States of America. We have finally arrived.